Today, it's your birthday. Yesterday was too, and so is tomorrow. Not sure what that means? Let us introduce you to this powerful concept and our community. We are thrilled you have joined us.
We are Helene and Christina, and our mission is to empower, teach, and remind women to celebrate themselves. Combined, we have over 35 years' experience in private practice as therapists. It was in the office, as well as in many of our personal relationships, that we were hearing women struggling and not feeling seen or alive during their, quote, messy middle life stage. Not sure how Christina and I define that? No problem. Go back to season 1, episode 2. We talk all about it there.
We come to you today not as therapists, but rather your friends in this life stage with you. Our podcast promises to talk about the hard or uncomfortable topics in a way to empower you, laugh along the way as part of our healing, and find joy in life. We strive to find meaning in the messy or the unknown. And what sets us apart? We leave you with gifts each and every episode. These may come in the form of actionable tools and strategies, invitations to be right where you are now, or sometimes mic drop thought-provoking ideas.
Now that we're friends, let's make this official. We would absolutely love to help start your Thursday mornings, so make sure you follow the show wherever you're listening to us right now and sign up for our free newsletter at yourbirthdaypodcast.com. Christina just shared with you those gifts that we love to give. On our website, when you click on it, you get the opportunity to take a quiz. Go ahead, take it. And Christina and I are going to drop presents and gifts right in your inbox immediately.
Today, we're diving into an unexpected topic. How to face your fears can actually be filled with powerful gifts and life-changing experiences. So grab your beverage of choice and settle in. Turn up the volume if needed. Get your comfy blanket if you need it. And let's talk about the idea of fear. Whether it brings up the instinct to run or the instinct to sit, you are not alone. Friends, remember when we're leaning in, even for just a second, it helps us work through those hard feelings.
Today's discussion, we kind of hope, is a little bit like a post-holiday full event gifts. Confronting and overcoming fears can lead to personal growth, deeper self-awareness, and guess what? Freedoms. There also can be hidden benefits of fear, what it teaches us, how it can transform us, and how we can harness its power to enrich our lives. Ooh, that was like 3 or 5 gifts right there.
Oh my gosh, it totally can.
The fact that you press play, friends, shows us that you're curious and perhaps wanting to explore this topic for yourself. Christina and I are high-fiving you all the way. Let's dive in. All right. Whew. Okay. So is this an oomph, a hell yeah, an oh shit? You decide, Christina, because I love how you set the stage for us.
I think it's a hell yeah and an oh shit. It can be both, right? Like we did the episode on and. Yes. I think it can be both. Like, oh shit, gotta face it. Hell yeah, I can do this.
I love that. Okay, gifts are ready. Okay.
Yeah, we've got this, ladies. Like, oh my gosh, if there's a disorder that is my love language, it's anxiety and fear. Like, I love my anxious patients. I love my fearful patients. Like, they are my people. And I love helping them through this. And I love helping my friends. Like, I don't know why this topic, like, invigorates me because
it fires you up.
It does. It does, because this is a big one. And when we talk about fear, I love teaching people about fight, flight, or freeze, right? We can do one of the three. When we're faced with a fear, we can get into total fight mode and combative and irritable and maybe even physically throwing punches. Like, let's get real here. Or we can be somebody who just runs away and hides and avoids the fuck out of it.
Right.
Or we can be somebody who's paralyzed and frozen. You know, everybody can talk of the nightmare where they're about to be attacked and they freeze and wake up. And now their greatest fear is if they're ever faced with that, they'll freeze.
And with that, I love that you taught people, right? Fight, fright, or freeze. The thing I want people to also know is that you may think you know how you would respond. However, in that moment, if you're in a fearful actual experience or a thought process, you may not know until it happens. So I just want to give the caveat, right? We might think how we're going to respond in something, but then when it hits us, it doesn't show up exactly how we wanted, and that's completely normal. The other
Mm.
thing I think we should tell people is the difference between, like maybe a healthy fear and an irrational fear.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah. So, like, give an example
yeah.
because I don't think people think fear can be healthy.
Ooh, I like that challenge. Okay. A healthy fear. Okay. So if you've been listening to our podcast and hanging out with us, you know my story. So about 8.5 years ago, doing life really hard. We have an episode about to drop, or maybe you listened to it already. Can't remember which way we're at about burnout. I burnt my life out to a crisp. Life took me
They
out.
already listened to Burnout if they're following an order.
Oh, if not, go back. It was a good one.
Yeah.
So I burnt myself to a crisp. Life took me out because I did not recognize what I needed. And I was diagnosed with a very rare and aggressive form of breast cancer, which I'm 8.5 years out and doing great. And a fear with that is that if there's any people in our audience, and this may not, I'm going to be careful. If this has happened to you, it's very real. If it hasn't happened to you and you're really early on in that journey and you want to put a pause in this piece, go ahead and do that. So I just want to give that
Yes.
disclaimer.
Yeah.
Um, but I had multiple surgeries. I had 7. And
Mm.
with those, there were some like bumps and formations, that things that popped up as my body was healing and becoming the new me. And there was a few times I felt things and there was a fear that came up. So
Mm-hmm.
the fear for me, I had to take a breath, reground myself and say, you just had blood work done. Everything came back great. You just
Right.
saw your doctor, got a high five, keep doing life. So I was able to ground myself. But the healthy part of it is that I would take action, that I don't have to be the medical professional of my own life. I just need to be the strong advocate and CEO of it. So
Right.
I would ask for an appointment. So that's a way I think you can have a healthy
Yeah.
fear and you can choose what you want to do with it, whether it's ask for support, ask for investigative space.
Yeah. I love that. And I would say the irrational fear, if we were going to, complement that, if, for lack of a better word, would be, you know, when Helene was going through it all, um, I had another friend at the same time as you who was going through a different form of cancer. And I found myself like triple checking my body all the time and like doing breast
Mhm.
exams on a weekly basis and like all this weird stuff. And I was like, this is irrational.
Right.
A, you have no signs or symptoms, but you're supporting two amazing women going through it. Fair.
Very fair.
And your job is to be there and support them, not go into crazy irrational fears. You probably didn't even know I did that.
I didn't.
Yeah.
However, there is a gift, right? Because I think if there is like a genetic tendency or if there is a history in your body history, like if Christina's saying, I spent a lot of time with my sisters hanging out and trying to make sure they were okay because she was hearing a lot about it. If you're
Oh,
not someone who isn't,
100%.
yeah, like do the
But
self
then go get the
exam.
genetic testing, go get whatever you need.
Yeah.
I had a patient, oh my gosh. I mean, every patient I see, I believe, are just I treat really brave, incredible humans. Like
Mhm. I think
love my
just walking
patients.
into the door of a private practice takes a
Yes.
ton
I
of
just had
courage
that
and bravery.
conversation with a patient yesterday. I said, the scariest thing you did was come up the elevator and walk into my office. And I'm so proud of you. And I want you to
Mm.
just take a deep breath.
Right.
And tears streamed down their cheeks. So, um, but with that said, I still remember a patient of mine who had lost two sisters to breast cancer, and her brother was just diagnosed with it.
Mm.
And she was so scared of a mammogram because she was
Mhm.
determined in her head that she was going to hear the C word.
Mhm.
And in all fairness, like a lot of it was rational, right?
Right.
Three
Right.
siblings had had it, died from it. One sibling was diagnosed with it. And so, like, without genetic testing, it was pretty obvious the genetics were there, right?
Right. Right.
And I just remember like doing this as systematic desensitization to get to the mammogram machine. The beautiful thing was that the clinic where she was having it done were just amazing, 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 kind people.
Mm.
That there was one technician that came in on Sundays to work with us on the systematic desensitization.
Oh, that is beautiful.
And slowly we got her there.
Right.
And she had the mammogram, and I'm happy to report hers was clean. But then she went and through the genetic testing and did all the other stuff
Right.
and ended up having, because of her genetic predisposition, the double mastectomy, the hysterectomy, all of it.
Right.
I don't know where she is now, but she kept in touch with me for a good 10 years and was
Mm.
cancer free, which was awesome.
That is awesome. So that's a good, like, a
Yeah.
big loop of like, so some fear can be healthy because it can ignite an opportunity to have agency over yourself, which in
Mm-hmm.
one of our earlier episodes, we talked about what it means to have self agency. You can be curious, you can invite others to help you, you can demand answers, but being mindful that you don't go to an irrational space, that you're projecting a potential fear and coming back to self, where I am in this moment. So,
Right.
yeah,
And I think, you know, if you've experienced some type of trauma,
right.
we naturally are in a more heightened state.
Absolutely.
And so we are more sensitive to things. You know, people who have a fear of flying, and if there's a plane crash, like that feels very validating to them of
Right.
like how dangerous it is to fly, far more validating than the statistics of how rare it is to have a plane crash.
Hmm.
Because the other thing is when we have a fear, we have a propensity to look for things to validate our fear.
Right. Because we don't want to feel alone in it, or we don't want to feel like
Right.
there's something going on or there's something wrong with me. So if I have some data that
Mm-hmm.
aligns with how I'm feeling, I can validate it. But there's also a slippery slope with that, as you just shared.
Yeah. And I think with the joy of social media, TikTok, YouTube shorts, the shorts that are on Insta or Facebook, any of them, it's very easy to find people saying things that validate our fears over truth.
Right.
You know, it's been very interesting for me to watch people saying, like, this company donated to this political party and this company donated to this political party. When, if you understand how businesses are run, businesses really don't donate to political parties. It's people who work for those companies. And they might be like the top exec, don't get me wrong.
Hmm.
But I really challenge people to like do their own research rather than trusting social media news.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so if you have a fear, like figure it out.
Right.
Don't,
Look for the power in fear, right? If you, I love that
yeah.
you said that. Like, do your research. So if you have a fear, there could be a lot of power in fear. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, if there's something coming up in your life and you recognize a fear, you can, it's a privilege to yourself to choose to go outside of your comfort zone and
Right.
recognizing that and recognize what can happen when you embrace the power of fear.
Yeah. I think a lot of people struggle with the fact that, like, as mental health professionals, how many times do we tell our patients, like, trust your gut, trust yourself? Like, you know yourself, like, believe in yourself. Like,
Right.
those are common phrases I use probably umpteen times a day, right?
Sure.
So, how do they trust themselves when they are a fear based human that keeps getting caught up in irrational fears? Like, how do you find that balance? What do you think, Helene?
Well, I would like to think and I'm not trying to sprinkle like positivity on a big statement, that there's only a very small majority of the population that are fear-based humans.
I agree, but I think we all have, I mean, we live in a society that breeds fear, right? We have media that likes to make us scared of lots of things.
Right.
We have, maybe we had an anxious mother, maybe we have,
Mhm.
an anxious boss, an anxious friend, an anxious partner,
I didn't think about
just
that. Thank you.
kiddos. Like they
Yeah,
all influence us, they sprinkle
true.
anxiety into our world. And so if you're surrounded by anxious people,
Yeah.
it's hard to stay grounded and not engage in their angst and fears. So then they get to the point that they're like questioning themselves
Yeah.
and they are wondering like, is this rational? Is this irrational? And so I think like how do we help our audience that might be struggling with that balance trusting themselves and overcoming fears?
Okay. So we're talking about some like tools for confronting the fear,
Yeah,
is what
like
it sounds like. Okay.
how do we how do we overcome that?
I
And
mean,
how do we trust ourselves? Like if you are a
hmm,
propensity towards somebody to be fearful, like how do you trust yourself? Like I go back and I know I probably overshare this example and I'm so sorry that I do, but this was a big moment in my life. But when I launched Therapy Suites, the co-working space, and I still remember like at one point it just felt enormous.
mhm.
And we had hit like a couple roadblocks like you do whenever you launch anything. Nothing like debilitating or anything. And I remember like laying in bed that night and I just prayed and I was like, if I am not supposed to do this, if this is not meant for me, like just slam a giant door shut and get me out of this lease, God. Like that was my prayer. Like just slam a giant door and get me out of this lease. And like I kept waking up throughout the night because I was so stressed and overwhelmed and scared and fearful and paralyzed. And like I would just wake up and pray that. And then I'd like drift back to sleep and over again.
Mm.
And that morning, my husband woke up and he was like excited about it. And he was like, oh, a therapy suite's this and therapy suite's this and therapy suite's this. And I like looked at him like deer in the headlights and I was like, I can't talk about it today. Right. Like I was in flight mode of like,
Mm.
just get me out of this. This is a mess. I shouldn't have done this. Like, get me out of it.
Mhm. And I think that it goes to one of the first things I was going to offer, that if you have someone in your life, and Christina gave some really great examples, it could be a child, a spouse, a boss, a coworker, and they are just vermal vomiting their fear at you. You may need to go back to season one to the really popular episode, Limiting Your Invites.
Mm-hmm.
So if you start recognizing within yourself that you are getting overwhelmed by all the noise and the true
Mm-hmm.
feelings from the other person, I want you to recognize it, name it for yourself, and then be able to say to that person, I hear you.
Yeah.
I recognize the fear that you're having, and it sounds tremendously big for you. What I
Mm-hmm.
also know is that this is something that I cannot listen to every day to be the friend that you need.
Mm-hmm.
So you may need to limit the
Set
invites, the
boundaries.
amount of exposure that you allow yourself to do. That's trusting
Mm-hmm.
yourself, like Christina just shared with you. And you may need to vocalize it either to yourself or to the other person. So if you need some support with that, go back to that episode. Another tool I would say is allow yourself not to think about it so big. So
Exactly.
oftentimes in the office, I will say, think of a medicine box. It's a little bit like compartmentalizing, if you're familiar with that term. If you have a lot of life stuff going on in your life, a little bit like a medicine box, and those boxes are all open at the same time, you may be very overwhelmed and stressed. So we have to close the boxes and only deal with the one in front of us. So if you picture that medicine box, perhaps about a fear, let's say the fear is public speaking. And in your mind, you're just seeing yourself on a stage, the bright lights on you, 300 people in the audience, puddles of sweat coming out of every crevice of your body. Woo, you're going to shut down. But if you look at it as a small piece, like, okay, I can name it. I'm terrified to do public speaking, but I don't have to go on that stage yet. I can
Right.
start small. I may
Mm-hmm.
have a trusted friend or a partner and say, hey, I want to practice some public speaking and I want to do that in front of you because I trust you and you won't judge me. Then after that, you may join the group like a Toastmasters, which are all over the United States and something like that. So I would invite people to break it up into small, actionable,
Yeah.
feasible things that you can do and don't look at the big picture because that may ignite that fight, flight, or freeze response that Christina talked about.
Yeah. And I talk with people all the time about like focusing on what is in your control versus what is out of your control.
Mhm.
That's a big one. And I think, and sometimes we have to put it away for a little bit, right? Like we just need to take a break from it because it's so big.
I love that. Yes.
And I love to put things in boxes and like imagine yourself putting it in a sealable container and putting it away. You know, I think I've mentioned my one of my favorite books is Tear Soup, and sometimes you just got to put the
Mm.
pot up. And so, you know, when I look back on that situation, I do remember like just taking a couple days off because I'd been working on it like 24/7.
Right.
And I was just like, I was at the burnout phase and we hadn't even launched yet.
Right.
And
So
so
allowing
then,
yourself to do that was helpful.
yeah. And then it's a matter of, like you said, breaking it down to little steps. So I went back to my lists of all the things I needed to do before we
Mm.
opened our doors. And
Right.
I said, pick one or two of these today, not 10 or 20, one or two.
And that was trusting yourself and knowing what your capacity was.
I remember a patient of mine like had been really, really sick and was returning to work and just felt inundated with the amount of work. And I said, let's pick one or two things to do a day. Not, we're not going to empty an inbox in your emails. We're
Right.
not going to be able to finish every project.
Mhm.
What's one tangible thing? And I said, and start out with the smaller things first because A, you're not as strong, you're not as energetic, you're probably not able to work a full day yet. And then let's slowly get back into it.
Mhm.
And what they found was as they started checking off more of the little things, they
Mhm.
were more motivated to do more of the bigger things. And all of a
Mm.
sudden, like 2 months
Mhm.
of work got finished in 2 weeks,
Wow.
which is incredible
Wow. That
because they were
is.
able to break it down into those
Yeah.
smaller steps.
Yeah. When I think about like another tool for confronting fear, I think of like mindfulness and positive affirmation and
Yes.
visualization. And I think I'll give like give a little, not a disclaimer, a little personal. So and Christina knows this, that's why she's smiling, because I think she knows what I'm going to say. So I don't like flying. I come by it naturally. I've had like 3 or 4 like hard flights or things that have happened, and
Yeah.
I've done EMDR around this. So I've gotten better. But I have to say, and I'm not someone who like woo woo myself, but my last couple of flights have been really good. And what I have allowed myself, first of all, I don't allow myself to talk about it with anyone until 24 hours before the flight. Because what I was finding is that if I kept talking about it and the dread of it and the projection of how it might be, I lost a week of my life. No one did that except for me. So I created a boundary 24 hours before. I don't talk about it before. And then I still don't go over and over again, but I might tell the person I'm flying with, like, hey, I just want to let you know I'm nervous about tomorrow's flight. But what also has helped is that I allow myself to get into the plane. And once I sit down and I have my seatbelt on, all I do is visualize what's on the opposite side.
Mm.
So last year, I had the absolute, I'm going to say luxury of like going to New York City with my son. He's in college, and it was just him and I. And we were going to the Billy Joel concert. We were going to see Wicked. Like I had him for 48 hours, which is a total treat for someone who's in college. And when we sat down, I just kept visualizing, the pizza, which you guys know I love pizza. Just, I just kept visualizing when
Oh
we
my
land,
gosh, now I'm getting on a plane.
it's
I'm
us in
very
New York
excited.
City.
I
And
know.
then this Christmas, I went with my kids again. And what did I picture? We're
Oh,
going ice skating. We're going to Rockefeller Center. Like, if I allow myself to visualize where we're going, it sparks joy,
I
it
love that.
sparks excitement. And that
Mm.
counterbalances the fear. And every time a little wave of fear would come up, and I'm not going to say it all went away. We had a
No,
little bit of turbulence. I just said, focus on the end. So I visualize what's coming as we land and what I'm looking forward to. And I notice all the physiological responses that are positive. My breathing gets calmer. I
hmm
smile. In fact, at the
hmm
end of the last flight, I said to my daughter, hey, go ahead, open up the windows. I always sit in the middle. I said, open up the window shade. And she's like, what? And I said, go ahead. I want to see it because I love New York City. And I just smiled. And I gave that gift to my kids because I was focused on the positive. So visualization, positive affirmation can be really helpful as well.
That is so cool. Yeah, I think absolutely. I love that envisioning the end goal. And that's a lot of what I had to do with therapy suites is just picture that space thriving,
Mhm.
picture the furniture in there, picture people coming out lighter after seeing their incredible mental health provider, like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's absolutely it. And I think that's something that I talk a lot with my patients is what would it look like if you overcame this fear? Like, what does that look like
Mm,
to you? What does it look like to not carry this fear around with you? What does freedom look
right.
like to
I
you?
love that because the fear can be in that moment. And what you and I know is an audience, you know it too. The clock is always ticking. So if you allow
Mhm,
yourself, and Christina has done such a great job in past episodes of teaching us how to get in connection with our five senses. So we're in the
mhm.
present and the moment. That wave of fear is not going to necessarily stay. And
Right.
then you can find what Christina invites her clients to do. Find that end goal. What do you visualize after it? I
Mhm.
love that.
Recently my dad had to have an outpatient surgical procedure and he was so nervous before. And I still remember like my husband and I, he was on the gurney waiting for them to take him back. And it was before he'd gotten
Mm,
the anesthesia or anything. And one of the things that we always did with my mom was pray with her before. And I said, "You
mm,
want to pray before?" And he's like, "Yeah." And we did. And I said, Dad, I said, the next time I see you, it will be over. And I said,
mm.
and you get to have like the most ultimate nap while it's all going. And I'm walking out there twiddling my thumbs, having to think 10 times about it every one
Mhm,
second. And he
mhm.
goes, yeah, this is kind of more torture for you than me. And I was like, yeah, it kind of is. And then we giggled about it, right?
Right.
And, we trusted the doctors and all that. That wasn't it. But being able to reframe it to him of like, you're
Mhm.
getting a nap. And when you wake up, it's done.
Right.
And I remember like a week after the procedure, I said, how good does it feel to be on this side of it? And he's like, awesome. And I said, I
Mm,
think the toughest anxiety is honestly anticipatory anxiety, right?
absolutely.
That fear of what's
Yeah.
ahead and we don't know it because we haven't experienced it yet.
I hear that a lot. And you're absolutely right. And that's when you can even start some of those, go back to some of those tools Christy and I are talking about. Go step by step. Think of the positive affirmation. I got this. Do it in the
Yeah.
future, right? We always talk about thanking the woman or creating the woman in front of you so she can, high five you. Let
Mm.
her be that visualization of afterwards, like Christina said, like if it's after the speech or after opening your business, when she's like high fiving it, or she is cutting that red ribbon, or she lands in New York City. Let her help you through it. And remember to keep breathing through the process.
And here's what I would say that strong woman,
Mm,
person, human is inside you. It
right.
is you.
Oh, say that again.
That strong person is inside you. You are just afraid to trust them. It's no different than the baby who ferociously held your hand when they were learning to walk because they were afraid to fall. Why were they afraid to fall? Because they had fallen, right? They had
Mhm.
fallen. So they
Right.
knew they were capable of falling. They weren't sure if they were capable of walking.
Ooh, I love that. Ooh, that just gave me goosebumps, literally. I love
And
that.
so the more that you practice it,
Yeah.
the more you will do it. That's what I would say.
Right.
Nobody wakes up fearless. They have to work through it and grow in confidence and grow in confidence and grow in confidence. And that's called resilience.
Ooh, so now we're talking about some gifts. It sounds like we love gifts. What do
Yes.
you get in terms of gifts from challenging your fears? Okay.
I think you get resilience when you are successful at overcoming a fear
Right.
and you realize that you have it within you and you're capable of it, you're more likely to accomplish another one. And if you look at it, we've been accomplishing fears since we were born, right? Birth can be a
Right.
fearful experience. Like you're coming out of this comfy, beautiful, precious womb to
Right.
like, whoa, cold world with lots of lights, maybe, you
Yeah.
know? And
Mhm.
then the fear of like being apart from your mother the first time, or
Mhm.
going to school, or riding a bike, or, petting an animal for the first time. Like there's all these
Mm,
things that can be scary.
absolutely.
And we overcome them so naturally. Driving a car, walking, like a simple thing of walking. And now as adults, like most
Right.
of us don't even think twice about it. Um, or, whatever, cooking, all these things that we are able to work through as humans and overcome. Whatever your big fear is right now, friend, if you choose to, if you make a conscious effort to do it, you can overcome it just like you have before because you have the resiliency in you to do it.
And I think when you do that, right, if you challenge yourself to slowly go step by step to work through the fear, I gain resiliency. I mean, another thing, another gift that you might get from conquering it is you get some self awareness.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you're unaware of your fears, we're just kind of walking around not knowing.
Mm-hmm.
So, in some way, for me, I think when you know your fears, you get ahead of potential triggers. I always tell people when you know your triggers, you have the opportunity to create a relationship with it. So,
Mm-hmm.
going back to, I have some fear about flying, I have that self awareness. I know it triggers things within me. With that self awareness, I now have the capacity and the capability to have some dialogue with myself, to check in, to explore what I need or what I want. And
Mm-hmm.
I can invite others to help me. So you gain also self awareness when you recognize your fears and what triggers it. So don't
Yeah.
push it away. Just like when we started this podcast, going into it, even just for a few seconds, you gain so much self awareness, information, and the opportunity to create change.
I love seeing people start out just like in fight, flight, or freeze mode, and then watching them transform and evolve as they're doing this amazing work.
Mm.
And you see just a
Mhm.
lighter pep in their step. You see
Mhm.
somebody allowing more joy into their life, finding more gratitude in their life, attracting more positive people. When you're living in
Yeah.
fear, you tend to attract like minded people. When you're living in
Mhm.
freedom,
Yeah.
you attract like minded people, right? And
Yeah.
so it opens doors to like incredible opportunities. When I think of therapy suites, like the amazing people I have encountered and gotten blessed by in my life and hopefully have blessed is really incredible. I don't think if I hadn't done therapy suites, I honestly probably wouldn't have had the courage to do this podcast,
Right.
right?
Right. So what you say is like when you face something, like I always think of people, like if they have a lot of fear, they might turtle inwards. Like I use
Mm-hmm.
that
Yes.
I guess visualization.
Yeah. They go into their shell.
Right. I say we turtle inward, but when you challenge a fear and you experience either growth or acceptance or confidence, like you shared, you're outward, you're expansive. Like your
Mm-hmm.
shoulders might be back, your head up,
Mm-hmm.
and you can meet more people and have opportunities. Like you said, like if someone, let's say, is scared of public speaking and they turtle inward and they shy away from it, but then they
Mm-hmm.
do some work around that, whether it's exposing themselves or they have some therapy around it, conquering it, and they're outward, like you said, and more available. Who knows? Someone might ask them to come speak in front of a group of people. They might get invited to do a TED talk. It can invite amazing experiences. And I love, even as I'm saying that, it goes back to what you said, Christina. If you picture what can be on the other side when you no longer either turtle in or avoid, you
Mm-hmm.
ignite the trickle effect of opportunity, of growth, of connection.
Yeah. So it's so interesting. Somebody came to mind who is a dear friend of mine, went through an abusive marriage, and through that abusive marriage was told that they weren't good enough, they weren't smart enough, they weren't capable, they didn't speak good enough English, like just awful things that were said to them. And they started to believe. And then we got told the marriage was over and left to figure it all out. And what rose out of this is, first of all, this human is just brilliant. She is
Mm,
brilliant. And she is so fucking talented. Like
mm,
anything she puts her mind to create, she can create. And she's just, I mean, all mediums of art. She just is incredible. In my therapy suites office, I have like a fake, I don't know, green wall, like framed green wall with the logo of therapy suites on it. And I was working on it, and she popped over to my house and she takes one look at it. She's like, "We aren't doing it that way." And I was like, "We aren't?" She's like, "Nope."
mm,
She takes me to Home Depot. She gets all this stuff. She comes
mm,
back. Like, we created, and it was beyond my Pinterest dreams.
mm.
Like, holy Toledo. I was just planning to like kind of line up plants and overfill it and all of this.
Right.
She came in with this just incredible human vision, right? With that said, like so scared to launch out on her own because she'd been told all this negative stuff that she started to believe.
Yeah.
And she overcame that fear. And she's an incredibly successful artist.
Mm.
Her pieces have been seen at Minneapolis Institute of Art, MIA, which here in the Twin Cities is like a huge fucking deal, like
That's awesome.
enormous. But she overcame her fear. And not to say that like little fears don't bubble up, like every so often she's like,
Mhm.
"I don't know if I can do this, Christina." And I was like, "Oh, I know you can."
Right.
Like, no doubt in my mind, friend.
Mhm. Right.
And then I say, with that, let's talk through what you're
Mm.
feeling. So I don't want
Right.
to invalidate that,
Sure.
but I also want to say, like, I believe in you 350% of your abilities. Like, so smart, so capable, like, put themselves out there and just took huge risks. And
Mm.
now is creating the life that she wants as a single mom. Like, she's starting to have flexibility. She's starting to be able to pick and choose what
Mm.
classes she wants to teach or what things she wants to do. And because she worked her ass off to show and prove her worth, and again is so talented and overcame some pretty huge fears and some pretty big trauma.
So I want to thank your friend because with her survivorship,
Mm-hmm.
she showed us that another gift that you can have from confronting your fear is growth and self-discovery.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't have to go from A to Z and be a really beautiful line. It could have some bumps, like it sounds like she
Oh,
did. It was a bump.
anytime you're
Yeah.
conquering fears, you have bumps.
And
Anytime
she
you have
had growth.
turbulence.
Right, the turbulence. So, okay, we got a bunch of gifts. Before we like let you guys go. We got to review these gifts that we're giving you. So when you confront your fears, you can get potential growth and self-discovery.
Mm-hmm.
Christina gave you guys the amazing gift of how you can build resilience,
Mm-hmm.
the self-awareness of what you need, and the opportunity potentially to learn and form a relationship with your triggers rather than push them away.
Mm-hmm.
And you may have unexpected magical opportunities, like building
Yes.
community and actual opportunities, like having a talking event in a platform you hadn't visualized yet. Whew, it is a little bit like a Christmas, like
Oh my
past
gosh,
Christmas
it is.
holiday
I think
event
that's
thing.
what's to me so fun about working with people with fears is that I feel like every session we give patients gifts that they can take out into this world. And today we get to do it with our friends. Like that is so cool that we get to do this today with our It's Your Birthday friends.
And thank you for letting us.
Yeah. This is just, oh, friends, I think we came up with like an oh shit and a hell yeah. And I hope as you're walking out with a hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So, friends, you held on throughout this episode, and we are so proud that you took time and care and invested in yourself today. Pause, give yourself an atta girl for that and an attaboy, because we actually have a lot of guys listening to us. So, our hope is that you walk away no longer seeing fear as your enemy, but rather as a powerful signal that can lead you to growth, resilience, and many opportunities. Hang out with us on social. Maybe you want to share a fear that you want to face and your first steps that you're taking to confront it so that we can all cheer you on. We are ready to rally you, friends. And if you want to hang out with us some more, which we hope that you will, we are on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. The other thing that we'll tell you is that on Mondays, we either do a video or a live with gifts from the couch. So come find us on Mondays. And we would be so grateful if you share this episode with a friend, a family member, an anxious human in your life, or just
Mm.
somebody that you think would love us. And leave us a positive review wherever you listen. This community is growing because of you, our friends. See you on Monday from the Gifts from the Couch and on Thursday with our episodes. Happy birthday.